Welcome to X1T Gaming, and together we're going to revolutionize the gaming industry. I remember to put my mic on today. Also, as you look behind me, you see that there's boxes there. No, they're not advertisements. I should have probably put them around. Yeah, no, they're just some of our Amazon packages that we are not throwing out because we're going to be using for we're moving at the end of the month. So hopefully we get all this going. And yeah, so we just got a little bit more videos with Blender that we're going to do and learn and see if I could figure something out. I still am waiting for like that video that's going to like teach me how to bend stuff, because I really feel like this this bending thing is where it's at, and I can make like a Bezier curve, but then I don't know how to attach it to the item and actually make it Bezier curve. Yeah, so hopefully we'll learn that, because like if we go to the ad, you got this and you got the Bezier curve. And let's move it. There you go. Got this little curve thingy, and that's it. I don't even know if I can move the vectors. I guess if we wanted to move the vectors, we had to change this into edit mode. And then they got these little vectors that we could probably move. I don't even know how to move the vectors. There you go. So there's a Bezier curve right there. We got these things that we can rotate. And so far it only really has like two vectors. So I'm going to have to learn how to make more vectors in this thing as well. Tilt, radius. Did I just... Oh, there we go. So we added one that way already. So now we're adding, and then we want to move. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. Try to make this one a little bit straighter, because we wanted to make it kind of loop around. Okay. So I could actually design this thing in a way. I'll have to play with it to make it actually move around. I didn't want that. I wanted this. So we kind of want to do like a P kind of thing. So from what I'm looking at, we might need one more joint in the circle, and then it'll be kind of also cool to see what is it? Let's see, where was the ad? Radius extrude plus. Okay. So this is kind of roughly the shape that I'm looking for. So if we look at our top view, that's not the view I wanted. Nope. So we're looking at this view, right? What am I doing? Okay. Okay. And what was it? It was shift and then the middle. There we go. So this is kind of the look that I'm going for, is to have this to go up. So you have the pachinko ball that goes up, and then it will hit something, and then kind of go down. So I need to make it in such a way where I might have too many points now. But yeah, so we could play around with it. I'll figure out how to make it like more of an actual circle. Yeah, I'll probably try to get like details being like, I want this point to be like here and more focused. I'll have like an actual square behind it so I could do that. And then I just need to add this Bezier curve to the object so that it will stick out. And yeah, I think this one needs to be more like that. And then this one, we're going to bring it more up. Change this one a little bit. Change this one a little bit. Yeah, so something along the lines of that. I don't need to make it perfect for now. And so it goes up and around. And I'm thinking like I don't need to make like a destroy object if it comes to this area. Because if it falls back down, it's probably just going to get hit to go back up. Because it's not like that thing. So I'm going to have that thing on. It's going to control the wheel all the time. So the wheel is going to be right here, and you're going to have your spinny thing that's going to control it over here. So as you rotate this one over here, this one's going to be in the background flicking pachinko balls, and then the pachinko balls are going to come up here, and we want to make it a design where they want to fall around here. So this is like going to be like the best design for them to fall around here. And maybe I'll put like a blockage right over here so that if it comes in here, it could bounce and then do its thing. But what we want to learn is we want to actually learn how to attach this to a line or like to a cube so that the cube will be stretched out all the way along here, be like a nice little thin thing. And yeah, so this is the Bezier curve, 3D, 2D. Yeah, we're going to want it to be 3D. Oh, radius, stretch, bounds, clamp. That's interesting. Yeah, so I'm a little bit nervous because I think that the Bezier curve is something for like pathing. It's not really something for just moving objects. So maybe we don't need the Bezier curve. Maybe we could probably, if we select this object right here, let's move it around. Okay, so if we select no, lots of fun. Oh, okay. Let's go back to the pedicure, but we want this one. Oh, it's not working. Okay, so we want to, what is it? Shift all. No, we don't want to add that. Oh, what? object mode. Let's go back to edit mode. Let's go back on the Bezier curve. That's weird. Wait, what the heck? So we're here. You could add stuff. Okay. Okay, there we go. So I found out that the cube for edit mode. So they have the poly stuff, smooth, shear, shrink, flatten, knife, blue cut, bevel. What's bevel do? I have no idea. So let's just go file new and watch our videos. Don't save. Now we're back here. And let's just watch our videos. That's enough playing around. Sorry for wasting your time. I was having a little bit of fun just trying new stuff. So we're going to go for those workspace, video, and finish off.
Workspaces are customizable groups of panels or editors that can be used for specific workflows. Blender comes with predefined workspaces that can be found in the tabs at the top. These are labeled as Layout, Modeling, Sculpting, UV Editing, Texture Paint, Shading, Animation, Rendering, Compositing, Scripting, and an option to add your own. If you can't see all of the tabs, just know that you can use scroll wheel or middle click drag to show more. Simply left click any of these tabs to switch to them, and you'll notice they look different. The modeling workspace is used for creating models by manipulating vertices directly. This is why you'll notice that the vertices or corners of your mesh are now selectable. That's because the modeling workspace automatically brings you into edit mode instead of object mode, as you can see in the top left-hand corner of the viewport. You can change into edit mode in any workspace viewport by changing the value of this drop-down menu or pressing the tab key. But the modeling workspace tries to make itself as convenient as possible for you to get started modeling. It also removes the timeline, as modeling typically does not require any animation. The sculpting workspace is similar to the modeling workspace, but is used for creating models by manipulating meshes with a brush. Sculpting is a more freeform method of creating models and typically results in higher poly counts not usable for animation. However, it is a great way to start your creation process to then re-optimize your mesh later on. This workspace automatically puts you into sculpt mode, which is also accessible through the same drop-down menu in the top left-hand corner. However, there is no hotkey for this mode. The UV editing workspace is used for editing your UV projection maps, which is another way of saying, I skinned this object and stretched its skin across a flat surface. Anyway, this is a very handy tool for texturing your objects, as textures must be represented in 2D but projected onto a 3D object. You can see the 3D viewport on the right with an object's corresponding UV map on the left. If there was an image linked to this UV map, that image may become visible on the 3D object on the right hand side, which would show you visually how the 2D texture has been projected. Texture paint is probably what some of you were thinking when I mentioned the complexity of UVs. Why paint on a 2D surface and project that to a 3D surface when you can simply paint on the 3D surface directly, like painting an Easter egg? Well, in this case, you can paint any object like an Easter egg. With texture painting, you can paint directly onto the 3D object, and Blender will project your painted texture onto a 2D surface based on the UVs. The shading workspace is a very important workspace used for manipulating materials, particularly with node-based shaders. The workspace puts your viewport into look dev mode, showing you in real time what your shaders would approximately look like at render. You can also access this from any viewport window using these buttons here. For hotkey users, simply press Z and use the pie menu that appears. If you want a more accurate display of your shader, you can also change it to rendered mode. If you play around with the numbers in the node editor below, you'll be able to see some changes in real time in the viewport above. It also includes an image editor and file explorer for any necessary image files. The animation workspace is catered specifically for animators to have all the tools they might need. The 3D viewport is where most of the animation will happen, but the dope sheet, which looks similar to the timeline, will be where all of your keyframe manipulation happens. You may also notice that there is a sliver of the timeline editor below the dope sheet. That is simply to provide all of the playback options, start and end frames, and keyframe navigation buttons the dope sheet does not have. For example, you can click this circle/record icon to start automatically recording changes in your object's location, rotation, or scale as keyframes for animation. The camera view on the left is also a 3D viewport panel, but focused on the camera's perspective. This is great for getting an idea of what the animation will look like at render. Now, there may be some of you who are wondering where the graph editor is. If you want to use the graph editor, simply create a new panel and select graph editor from the editor options in the dropdown. However, the dope sheet is so powerful with keyframe manipulation compared to other 3D animation software that the graph editor is not used nearly as often, but it can still be useful. The rendering workspace is used for testing or finalizing the output of your file. If you had a recent render, it'd likely be displayed here. It's important to note that this is the same image editor that we see in other workspaces. However, the image selected is render result, giving you access to slots, which serve as great temporary render test comparisons. These slots are accessible both through the top right drop-down as well as the right-hand side.
I feel like we just gotta watch this together.
Quick menu pulled up with the N hotkey under Image.
I can't follow
For
along
hotkey
and
users, you can
show you
use
guys.
J to toggle between the most recent two slots, or use any of the numbers on the number row to go to a specific slot corresponding to that number. The compositing workspace is used for post-processing and After Effects that would add beautification to your renders, such as glow, blur, masks, etc. The compositor in Blender is node-based and is very similar to the shader editor in the shading workspace, but has its own editor in the drop-down menu. In order to start using the compositor, simply check Use Nodes at the top here. This will automatically generate a view layer node and a composite node. The composite node is simply the end result receiver, your final output. And the view layer node represents how you can use view layers to combine different passes, such as character and background in this compositor. Now you may notice that there is a dope sheet provided at the bottom, which is Blender's keyframe manipulator for animation. So why is it here? Well, let's say you're doing an animation where you want one particular part of the animation to have heavy directional blur because the camera is moving fast, but you want to turn it off after a certain point. In this case, you'll want to keyframe your blur property. The dope sheet is provided to help you keep track of those compositor-specific frames. The scripting workspace is for those instances where we might have to write some code. The text editor is very flexible. It can load and save files externally, enable syntax highlighting, enable word wrap, enable word lines, and a number of other useful coding tools. It can also provide easy to set up templates for common Blender script functions, such as UI elements or gizmos. You'll notice there's also a console panel provided on the left. This is for seeing error messages at runtime. And at the bottom, we have what's called the info panel. This is a list of recent operations that have been performed by Blender, which usually correspond to actions the user has taken somewhere in the software. For example, if you select an object in the 3D viewport and transform it, you'll notice a new line appear in the info panel. You can copy and paste these operations onto your text editor for reference on how to use certain functions. And finally, we have our Create New Workspace option. This will bring up a few options, but you'll notice many of them are grayed out. This is simply because they already exist in your tabs. However, you can select Duplicate Current, which is a great way to start customizing your own. Simply duplicate the workspace and double-click the tab to rename it to whatever you like. If you'd like to bring a certain workspace to the beginning of the list for easy access, you can right-click the tab and choose Reorder to Front. You can also remove workspaces from the list by right-clicking and selecting Delete. Keep in mind that if you delete a custom workspace, it will be lost forever. In order to save a custom workspace, I recommend setting up a custom startup file by opening up a new file, setting up your workspace, and then going to File, Defaults, Save Startup File. Your workspace will then be included in every new Blender file you create. However, while you are looking through the new workspace options, you may have noticed that there are a few workspaces in the creation options that we haven't seen yet. We may go over these in another video, but I highly recommend looking into the strengths of Blender's 2D animation capabilities, as well as its powerful VFX and motion tracking capabilities. And that's the general summary of how workspaces work. We'll be going over specific workspaces in more detail in their separate videos.
Okay, so I actually am starting to think that Blender is mandatory for our company. Simply because it's a lot of animation stuff that's going on. And yeah, so my thoughts on this whole process of Blender. I'm not an artist, so it's probably going to be a little bit more of a difficulty for me, but I'm going to have to learn. But simply, if we're going to want to have cutscenes in our stuff, you can't do that with Unity. You can't make these nice animations with Unity. If once we learn how to do modeling, you could just import it. I'm not going to just use Blender only and not Unity, because from what I'm seeing, the code aspect they had, I think it was like Python, not C#, which is okay. But I don't see any like testing stuff. It didn't look like they're geared for game creation. It looks like they're more focused on 3D models and animation, which Unity so far doesn't do any of those things. And we need those for when we get bigger. Like, for those of you who know Blizzard, back when it was good. Diablo 2 was probably one of the biggest games that people played that I was really into, and the cutscenes for the time were like amazing. And I haven't seen them now, but I'm pretty sure, well, in my mind, they're still amazing. And that's what I would love to be able to do for some big projects. I would love to be able to like create these storylines, create these 3D model animation cutscenes, which will be great. So, yeah, from what I am seeing, this is probably a must thing to have, which I'm glad it's free. But yeah, no, it looks really good. It was funny because like I was looking at a meme and it was talking about how like, oh, if you need like a what was it? It was like a substitute. Like they're talking about if you need like a free substitute for these paid versions. And so saying like, and they're having a whole list, and one of them was like Photoshop. If you don't want to pay for it, then use Blender. And there was some like other stuff that were like paid at free. So some guy was commenting on all of these and just like was going on the first list and was just like, yeah, no, uh, the paid version is the way to go for this one if you can, because blah 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 blah. It's all this, and then of course when we get to Blender, like we can't talk about Blender. Like it's just absolutely better than Photoshop. If you're using it, if you're not using it, it's crazy. I don't know Photoshop at all, so I can't say that it is or not. I just saw the comment, which was kind of funny. And so what I'm looking at, this is seems pretty interesting, and it would be great to actually learn. I'm going to probably need those like drawing pads, that you could draw if I'm going to be doing this aspect. And yeah, and we're going to have to get to a point where we're going to have to hire animators, people who want to do animation, tell their story, and it'll be pretty cool. Maybe, who knows, maybe we could make like a game that's like an animated game What was that animating game? What was it? It was like this puzzle game, and it was like you had to click to this thing. It was like the whole thing was animated, and it was this knight that was like going through this castle. I can't remember the name of it. And it was like you had to click on these things at like a certain time, like before the animation was over, like for the puzzle. Otherwise, like you die, and so I have to start all the way over again. So so that's interesting. Like there's different ways of creating different unique kind of play style games, which with animation. So that could be a uh, very good thing to have. So let me just look at some other stuff that we have here. They got like pipeline and tools. I don't know what this is. Rigging, characters, library. Okay, so they have a whole bunch of character stuff to look at as well. Like looking at some of this like animation stuff here. Like let's look at it. Let's look at it together. So you're seeing like some of these things that they have for their animation. It's like absolutely amazing. Like look at these details for some of this stuff. So I don't know how long it would take for some people to make a character like this. Probably a long time. Like look at all that fur and stuff. Not fur, wool. Look at all that wool on it. Like you can really see it. Um, yeah, these people who did it are amazing. And I'm not saying that this is all Blender. Like obviously, you have an artist behind it. Like for me, I wouldn't be able to do any of this yet. I don't have the artist's capability because I haven't been practicing. This one I might be able to do, but like going like this, no. Making people, I don't think I could do that. Maybe this one right here looks pretty simple, but even in the simplicity, it's still like really nice. Um, yeah, so this is the one that we were looking at, like pipeline and tools. I don't know what this is. You got rigging, this pipeline architect, spring production pipeline, naming conventions. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm not. Yeah. So we gotta learn Blender. We got one more video that I want to do before we're done. Where's our video? Is the right click select. I want to go through this video and then I want to try to go through modeling, which we won't go through modeling today. Oh, there's a lot of short stuff. Creating meshes, object and edit mode, mesh selection, extrude, loop cut, bevel tool, knife tool. Yeah, no, these are definitely what I need. If we're going to look at like shading, do we need shading? Yeah, we don't need shading right now. Maybe texturing. Yeah, lighting, rendering, rigging. What's rigging? Object parenting. Okay, so we might need rigging, but this is looks like it's more for like character stuff. So it's kind of like okay, we're going to need rigging, but not right away, especially if we're going to want those characters. So okay. So remember we had one of those prototypes back. I can't remember what prototype it was. Maybe like prototype 4. And we had that man that was like running. I wanted to like learn how to set that up and how do we create our own. And I think this is probably it. I think this is where you're learning because I'm just like looking at the stuff like you see this T square. Usually what you'll do is you'll have like a skin or a mesh for a character that's just kind of like up in this, and then you have to kind of like put a skeletal structure within them, and then the skeletal structure you can move, and then you'll see the mesh move with it as well, and then you can make those things do different things. Yeah, I. Okay, so it wasn't Photoshop that they was complaining with Blender. It was 3D Studio Max that they were saying that Blender is the free version of 3D Studio Max. The only reason why I remember that now is because I did a little bit of 3D Studio Max, 3D Studio Max in high school, and I made these guys have this little fight animation. So I had to get these skins. I downloaded them off the internet, and then I had to put these bodies to them. But it was actually kind of funny because like one of them was like absolutely like massive, and then the other one was like short. It was like weird, and I didn't know how to change the skins because if I edited the skins, it was different. So what I ended up doing is I put the skeletal structure on them, and then I kind of did like a perspective kind of thing. So this really big. So we have like, what do I have anything here that's big and small? Looking at my kids' toys on the ground. Okay, so it's kind of like we have these two objects right here. So if I'm putting them right side by side, you can see like one is clearly bigger than the other. Like you can put it like right in here, it fits pretty nicely. So it's kind of like this, but I use like a player perspective. And so what I did is I brought this one up closer towards the camera. So as you're looking at it, like it goes right through. Like there's no like it's a big difference. But because of the camera angles, they look like they're the same size. And so what I did was I had this size for these characters at this far. So if you see, I'm like this far apart, right? So depending on the camera angle, so I'm like there, and then I had them like fighting like this, and it was so funny because like people were like looking at me like in the animation, and they're just like, what is wrong with you? Why are these guys just so they're looking at it and these guys were just like this and they're like, why are these guys dancing like that? And then I'm like, no, like if you render it in the camera position, you'll see it looks like they're actually fighting. And they're like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so you could play with camera angles as well. That was fun for me when I was in high school. It's just playing with the different camera angles. For example, playing with camera angles, I had this one where we had to like, it's in 3D Studio Max. We had to go and we had to pick an object and move it somewhere. So the whole challenge was it was like three objects. It had to be three separate things to learn to get the grasping motion and stuff like that. And so what I decided to do was I decided to do a robot where it was just like this robot had these long giant arms, and I was able to manipulate the arms, but I couldn't really do anything else with the robot. And I decided to pick up a weight and have him work out and stuff like that. Put the weight down, and then he went and picked up a bomb, and then the bomb dropped and it exploded. So because I wanted to show some like particle effect that I was doing, and so what I ended up doing. Sorry, let me put this in this perspective. So yeah, so what I ended up doing what do I have any of my kids' toys around here? They could do that. No, I don't think so. I'll probably break them. So yeah, I couldn't make the thing bend over. Let me see if I have my kids' toys. Got this weird baby that they left on the ground. They put all their other toys away. Um, yeah. Okay, so I got this weird baby doll. So this is like pretend it's a robot. So it had to pick up something. So it picked up a weight, and then it had to go and kind of do lift weights or whatever. And so I had this thing, but I couldn't get it to bend down to go pick up the weight. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? So I like literally took the arm out of the socket of this thing, and then I went down and I picked up the weight, and then put the arm back into the socket, and then I lifted the weight. And it's just like it was so funny because like I was doing this rendering and my computer was like really really bad at the time. It was like I don't know, I guess the equivalent of the computer that I have now for back in the day, comparatively. But it was like so bad, and so I was asking my friend to render, and my friend was like looking at this, and he's just like, "Dude, this is like garbage. Like, what the heck are you doing to this thing?" And I'm like, "No, no, no." I'm like, "Just render the camera angles. Like, don't worry about anything else. Just render the camera angles that I have there. Just do that." And then he's like, okay, fine. So he renders. the camera angle, and it worked out good. I got like a really good score on this thing, and nobody ever knew. And so I am spilling out my secret to you all now that yeah, when you come with camera angles, you could cheat a little bit. Yeah, so it's quite fun and exciting once you get to like actually figure this stuff out. So I know it's a little bit boring right now that we're trying to watch these videos and we're watching the introduction videos, but it just we got to start somewhere and take baby steps. It's like, you know what, this time next year we just keep doing a little bit every day, and next year who knows, I'm planning to have at least 4 games out. uh, I'm hoping that we're going to have employees that they're going to be able to start making games too, so that's going to be more than 4 games. I'm just looking for me personally. We're going to be learning these stuff, giving opportunity to other people, working together, finding different ideas, which is going to just extend and these little bit of steps, like just a little bit every day, is going to do wonders in the future. And that's what I'm excited for. That's what I'm excited to, like, hey, I'm going to be able to do some of this stuff. My art will definitely improve as I do this. I don't know how much is going to improve. um, I don't know if I could do the animations really good, or maybe the animations is where I'm at, or maybe I just need the models, and then I could animate them and move them how it is and look at different camera angles to be like, ooh, I want this, but let's cheat a little bit and take this because it's just easier to take an arm out of a socket, pick up the thing, but you're only filming this part of the hand. So if you how can I do it? So if like you got like an arm like here, you just have this, like if you see this coming like this, just the arm part picking something and come back up, and then all of a sudden it comes back out and you see that it's in the socket, you're going to never know that it came out of the socket. So there's a lot of stuff with animation that I think is great, and you work with camera angles and you can cheat. So that's going to be exciting to learn. But let's do this last little video and then
By
we'll call it
default,
a day.
Blender uses left-click to select objects and various other elements in its editors. However, when Blender was first created, it used right-click to select by default. This confused many people at the beginning and has divided communities on which one is better. Now, most of you will think, why would anyone use right-click to select when every other software in the world uses left-click to select? Well, there is a good reason for it actually, and I'll be spending this video trying to explain to you why many people prefer right-click select when using Blender. But before we get into that, let's go over exactly how to switch to right-click select, and how that affects your key map in Blender. To switch between left and right-click select, simply go into Edit, Preferences, and go to Key Map. Here you'll see an option called Select with Left or Right. Let's choose Right to change to right-click select. As you can see, as we left-click in the viewport, instead of selecting, our 3D cursor now snaps to our cursor location. If we right-click, however, our cube can be selected. But you may remember that right-click often gave us a context menu. Since right-click will no longer bring up your context menu in certain editors, you can now press W to access that same menu. Now, I want to quickly clarify how right-click select works. It does not simply switch left-click and right-click for every action. In fact, many things still use left-click. What it does is specifically take out the selection action and assign that to right-click, so that right-click will always be select. This is in contrast to left-click select, where left-click includes tool usage, button pressing, and selection. With right-click select, tool usage and button pressing are still left-click, whereas right-click is now select. This has benefits in helping the software understand what the user's intentions are between selecting and performing an action. This is especially helpful during instances such as weight painting or texture painting. In these painting modes, there are typically selection actions that can be performed, but with left-click select, these get confused with the action of painting on the surface of the mesh. For example, for weight painting, If you select the armature and then shift select the mesh and go into weight paint mode, you have the option to select the bones to select which vertex group to paint. However, with left click select, attempting to select the bones with left click will immediately be confused for the action of painting. Therefore, left click users will have to hold a modifier key, in this case, Control, to select the bone instead of painting. This can also be seen with face selection mode while weight painting, which will restrict your painting to specific selected faces. This mode will also only recognize selections with left click if you also hold Control. However, with right click select, these actions become very distinct, allowing you to simply right click to select and left click to paint. This streamlines the workflow immensely. The same goes for texture painting, which has a similar face selection mode but requires Alt left click to select faces. These are just some examples, and you will find that there are many other situations and tools where separating the selection button and the action button will provide great benefits to your workflow. This is one reason to use right-click select, but let's get into the big reason why right-click select is still popular today. While left-click select is far more beginner-friendly, the biggest benefit of right-click select is that it is easier on your index finger. For artists, this can be a big one, as wrist injuries or repetitive stress injuries can really impact your productivity and long-term health. By using right-click to select, a large percentage of the clicks your index finger must perform is offloaded to your middle finger. This reduces the strain on your index finger significantly, especially considering how much you have to click in 3D software. For some users, this is reason enough to switch to right-click. Right-click select has a long history with Blender. In fact, you can even submit feature requests at rightclickselect.com. There are many users who swear by it, and there are many who prefer left-click select. The choice is up to you, as they both have their benefits. I hope this helps you better understand the benefits of right-click select in Blender, and I encourage you to try it out.
Okay, so that's it for the videos. We're going to stop there for today. That's very interesting. I might actually, I don't know. Do I want to do left or right? After this video, I feel like I want to do like a right click select. Not because it's like changes the doing the left one where you offload it a little bit. That one to me is not. I'm a gamer. I'm clicking all the time, so like my index finger, it's got its I don't know, built muscle built around it, I guess. Um, but I do like the right click select just to kind of not confuse the select and the paint kind of aspect. Because like I know there's some aspects in when I was trying to do stuff where I'm like, oh, I didn't want to select that. I wanted to move it, but because yeah. So I might do right click select. We'll see. But yeah, we're gonna call that a day. We're going to watch some more videos for modeling tomorrow. That's good. I'm excited for that and they're going to be shorter. So the maximum one you have is about like a 4-minute video. So we should probably be able to go through at least half of them tomorrow and be able to practice some of them as well. And yeah, it's exciting. Looking at these introduction stuff, I'm actually really excited with Blender. Seeing the animation, like I was thinking before, I was just like, I don't need animation. I don't need animation. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, I do need animation. The animation is going to be great because we want to get to the point where we do have these cutscenes. Because I find some cutscenes, they just really add to the story and the depths of the game. Yeah, but I don't know. We'll have to see Because one of the things that I've really enjoyed was seeing like gameplay cutscenes rather than having like these nice animated cutscenes. But then again, when I was doing like when you look at what Blizzard did, their animated cutscenes were like really good and really fantastic, and they were so good that it got to the point where people wanted them to make a movie. And then I don't know why they didn't just use their animated cutscenes technology to make the movie, and why they needed to make it like an actual budget with characters and stuff like that. They could have just got voice actors and do all that stuff. I think they, yeah, it was a thing they could have done great but failed at. But yeah, that's it for today. I'm curious about this 90-day challenge. I kind of screwed up the my timeline of how I wanted to get things done. I thought that making the pachinko would take a little bit longer, but I didn't think it was going to take this long. So we'll see how we get to the end. And I'm still waiting for my Google review before you guys can play my next game. Or my first game, I should say. My first game. So I'm excited for you guys to see that. And I got a special little surprise for you when it comes out. I'm not going to spoil it. You gotta wait. But yeah, so until next time, we do 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If this is not the right time for you, please leave it in comments. What will be the last best time that you think will be streaming? And I will try to stream at that time if possible. So you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next